By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as therapeutic advice to treat any mental health condition in either yourself or others, including but not limited to clients that you are treating. On this journey, we discuss many different approaches, modalities, and helping services, none of which we guarantee will be the best or most ideal approach for you. Please research for yourself and consult with your physician, psychiatrist, or other mental health provider for any medical or mental health issues that you may be having. This podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. Privacy is of utmost importance to us. All people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect patient confidentiality. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors.
I think I love the fact that for all it's medical, psychotherapeutic, ways of providing this type of treatment. I also like the set and setting that we're talking about because it reminds me of the times that I experimented with psychedelics, and it was definitely not the right set and setting. Like you mentioned it, Jorge, but honestly, dude, like I tripped balls.
Dude, you fucking ruined my fucking trip out here. Like, I'll tell you that.
You're one and only, man. You never tried it again.
But you're right. Yeah.
But I will admit that the effect of that on the brain, I was lost in my own blankets upstairs in my room. But I was tripping in my mind. Like I went down to the molecular level. I saw like all the atoms that we're made of.
I'm Ant-Man.
For reals, yo. I was like, yo. But obviously you and one of our other homies had to help me because I had it bad, and that was not the right set and setting. But then later in life, much later, like a good 10 years later, I met my boy Lou out here and was able to share some more psychedelics, and seeing the kind of set and setting that you provide, and kind of like how we had these trips on hikes, like that was so much better to be out in nature.
Yeah, just like being one with that.
Do not be in closed settings is one of my recommendations for sure. Mm-hmm. Like I get a little bit anxious like in the room, but like when we were walking on the trail, yeah, there were times when my body felt like loose, but it was completely different.
Yeah.
The way that you perceive everything, the way that you're seeing everything, you're seeing all these patterns, and then you're tripping about these thoughts that you're having. It really is mind altering, man.
Oh yeah, it's very mind altering. You're able
to make sure you're not on a steep hill, bro.
Yeah.
You can, but it's crazy, right? Like we've shared some experiences like where we're like watching Off the Wall, right? Yeah. Or not off the wall. What's it? Off the air. Off the air, and like some of that is so trippy, and like I love that creative side too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just I don't know. It just puts you. It kind of just like I was saying before. It just gives you a different perspective on your own life and just how you just how you are as a person, how you viewing things, how you like just give you perspective on every area of your life. And I feel like that's when I take psychedelics, it's more for just I do it for fun at times, but like for me, it's more like just for growth and just being introspective, and just really looking inward and seeing like how can I grow more? What are some like these edges that are in my life that I can just like kind of just shaping up, and just I think it's just more for me just to look at my life and examine where I'm at And it just helps me put me in that space to be able to do that, and I know there's other ways to do that, and that's cool. But like for me, this way, like this is one of the ways that has helped me grow as an individual, and that's how I kind of just approach it, with these these substances.
Which is kind of interesting because a lot of people use substances to get away and check out. So to be able to flip the perspective on that is...
Listen, man, steel sharpens steel, right?
It's like an ultra focus on
Iron
it.
sharpens iron.
Iron sharpens iron.
Swing and a miss. Oh, that's New York?
That's New York.
Okay. But, I mean, so then can you then argue that other substances or drugs could be used or should be used more in like a guided, therapeutic, structured...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when it comes to psychedelics, I think it's a good thing. You know what I mean? But like, I think you can do it in your like just by yourself. You just got to be able to know again, it's all set and setting, knowing that okay, I'm in this comfortable space, like I'm okay, and like. And if you've done it like a few times, and stuff, and or more, if you've done it for a while, like you can do it by yourself. But I feel like if you're ever starting off, this is the first time, like I really want to get into this and check it out. I think it was just do it with like people that have done it before that you trust and kind of be there with them, or do it in a guided kind of setting. For sure.
But I mean, if we all wanted to, gather on a weekend retreat and call it Drinking Weekend and talk about feelings for each shot. Will we have the same therapeutic approach?
Who's gonna watch who? Who's gonna take care of who? If he's tripping balls, like he's gonna ruin it for everybody.
I just meant drinking
We're
weekend.
all
Like,
gonna have to
drinking
take care of
alcohol.
it.
we all just drink alcohol.
Will we get the same effect if we did that? I don't know. I don't.
I think he's throwing out a hint.
I don't think so. I mean, we got to have some limits on this shit, But like, it's just the understanding of psychedelics. Like, alcohol is a depressant.
Yeah.
In the category of drug, it's a depressant. It literally makes your brain function slower.
Well, it turns off parts of your brain.
Of course.
Like
But
courage.
psychedelic is actually sparking different neural connections that haven't been sparked. Like it's you start to see these patterns. Like, you have all this brain activity that supports like this growth.
So you're saying you're as a person you're able to access more of your brain, right? What was that saying? Like we access like 5 to 10% of our brain.
I don't want to go that far, but like
John's about to go.
I don't know. I think right. Like could that
pill?
be?
no.
Could
Shout out
that be the
Bradley
most
Cooper, though.
relative movie that is out there?
Or are we saying like alcohol won't work, marijuana may not work, ecstasy, LSD for sure? Or is there just different type of drugs that you would try to get for a specific healing component?
Yeah, I think with MDMA and like shrooms, LSD, I think those are more used in a therapeutic setting because we've done a lot of there's been a lot of research done already, and it's proven and shown that this is effective in a clinical setting. And I think. I know they're doing research with like cannabis and PTSD, with just being able just to deal with the symptoms. They're not dealing with the core issue of the trauma. They're just dealing,
stuff,
they're just dealing with the symptoms, just alleviate them from some suffering. Mm-hmm. So there's some research on that, showing great results around that to be an alternative to use to treat PTSD
and I think
symptoms.
You bring up a good point because when we look at the medical model, we look at prescription or taking drugs, it's usually for a symptom, right? Like it's trying to reduce some type of symptom that we're having, whether it's a medical problem, whether it's taking an antidepressant, or an antipsychotic.
Well, this is joining really psychedelic and behavioral health.
Exactly, right? You're trying to not just reduce symptoms, right? But you're trying to reintegrate that therapeutic intervention into your life and establish that change.
And I think it's even getting further than that. It's like when you think about like trauma and like very complex PTSD, there's like, you got to look in the sense of like, and this is where the spiritual part comes in of like psychedelics is like, you're getting to like the soul wound of someone. You know what I mean? That the puncture of that trauma in the soul of someone. It's so then I think that's where maybe our therapy field is missing too, is kind of adding almost like a spiritual aspect to it too, because we have to deal with, I think as humans, we're we're multidimensional. We're not just a mind. Like we're mind, body, and spirit. And so it's being able to deal with those three parts or those parts of humanity. Like I think a lot of the therapy field misses that, and I think that's where psychedelics is being. It's dealing with that part. It's the spiritual part, the meaning making part of us. You know what I mean? That hits the very soul. And like, and we're going to be talking about existential too. And like, we're talking about those type of things of just like the deep things, of humanity, getting like talking about your subconscious and all these things, but like getting in the soul of that. And I think psychedelics get to that point where it heals the soul, heals that wound.
Do you think that you would be able to, describe maybe one of those psychedelic experiences where like it hits you to the wound? I mean, I know that you've talked, just with me, man, about like seeing death cycles, seeing like rebirths.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah. I think like I wanted to talk about this specific thing. And I know, because this one really like got to the core of things in my own life, you know what I mean? And really found healing and, and really was able to move on from these things, and I've done ayahuasca. And so the first time I did it was in, I think it was 2019 in February, and so a couple years ago, and so it was during that time, a lot of things were happening in my life before that, and I, to be open and vulnerable, I was married once, and I got divorced from from my ex-wife, and so that happened in 2018, around the beginning of 2018. And so that rocked my world, you know what I mean? And really rocked my world and just really shook to the core of it got to the point, it's where, what's going to happen to my life now? Where am I going? Where am I going to live? Life has changed so drastically. You had a future and you had this plan with this, with my partner, and this is where we're going to go. And then all that changed, just in one moment, and so it just really jolted my world and just a lot of existential stuff. And so just going through that time, and before that, I had my dad was diagnosed with cancer in December 2018. And so dealing with that, one of my best friends died around September 2018. He just dropped dead, he had a brain aneurysm and just died. It was tragic, so that was my best friend. And so he died. And going through my, that diagnosis of my dad having cancer, and then going through a divorce, all that. It was one after another thing was going in my life. And it was just it was death.
You even left your church shortly before.
Yeah. And going through, through the process of that, I was in church most of my life, and so it was around 26, 27, left church. I was I don't believe this anymore. And I was really dedicated to it, man. And so, but leaving that community, I lost all my friends. I lost all my community. And so I was just kind of left with just by myself and just trying to figure out life and trying to figure out okay, what is life outside of church, and, all I knew was church. All I knew was church people, the church I came from, they tell you not to associate with people that don't go to church, and so I grew up in a very strict conservative, Christian background. And so, so out of that, I lost all that, lost all my friends, lost all my community, lost all my beliefs, so I had to come up again of what does this all mean? I had a certain answer, for everything, but didn't have that answer anymore. So I had to really figure out who am I? What do I believe? What is the meaning? What does this all mean? So I had to create a whole different belief system. So going through all that, and just, so it was just a very culmination of things, and just going through all those things I was saying, it really left me in a dark place. It left me really just just dead inside and not really knowing, just sad, depressed, and just really just uncertain about a lot of things, in life. And so, so when I, ayahuasca, I went in, I was in, February 2019. And so I went, and there was a place around here in this area that leads ayahuasca ceremonies. And so I got connected to this place because my friend, he came from the same church I came from, but I haven't seen him in years. And this was around October 2018. And we met up. Well, somehow our friends got together, and then he was there. And so I started chopping it up with him. And then we started talking about we just started talking about life, and then he's just like, yeah, you ever heard of this thing called ayahuasca? I was like, yeah, dude, I've been wanting to do that. And he's like, yeah, man, I did it about a year ago. And he went through a divorce. He went through a lot of things too. And he's like, I did it, man. And it like changed my life, man. Like I was going through a lot and just very dark place. And like just doing that really changed my life. And he's like, I was like, dude, I've been wanting to try that, you know, and I've been like wanting to find a place to do this. And he's like, yeah, man, here's this place. It's like near here, like an hour away from San Jose. He's like, I'll give you the information and you can try to get connected. So he gave me the information, and then I got connected. And so, yeah, so the ceremony took place in February. And so I went there, and, you know, I didn't know what to expect. I was kind of just like, all right, well, let's see how this goes. You know, I've read about it, heard about it, seen a lot of stuff about it on YouTube and documentaries and stuff. So I was like, kind of knew a little bit of what I was getting myself into. But like, when it's a personal experience, you don't know, man. I'm just like, okay, well,
It's like you think you know.
think you know, but you don't know, man. And so, so we got there, and it was on this Indian reservation, in this land there. And so, when I got there, there's this huge giant teepee in the middle of this, just like this nature. And so, we go in there. There's like about 15, 20 people in this huge like teepee. And so, you know, I get in there. You have your little space, and so I just, you know, just waiting there, and then all of a sudden they kind of they came in and started talking about like what's the experience going to be. This is how it's going to look like, and you know, this is how to stay safe, and like, you know, your sitters here, and they'll be here to support you if you need them. And so, kind of explaining that, and then they did this ceremonial thing where they took the sage and kind of just like what they call smudging, and so they smudge you with it, just like more like a cleansing before going into this ayahuasca ceremony. And so, and then after they did this thing, I forgot what it's called, but like it's usually in these ceremonies where they blow this thing in your mouth and your nose. So it's like this guy that goes to you and just like blows this, like almost looks like cinnamon consistency, and he just blows it in your nose, and it just like you start tearing up because it's like fucking in your nostrils, like shit. It's like
Do the cinnamon challenge. Cinnamon challenge out here.
so like your nostrils are just on fire, bro. You're like, what the fuck's going on? But it's a mild hallucinogen, and so you kind of just feel it. You're just like, oh crap. But supposedly, like what they say is supposed to kind of open you up to the ayahuasca experience. So like it does something in your brain where it allows you to like get prepared for it. That's what they said.
I think that definitely probably gonna need a little prepper for the ayahuasca, because that's I mean, if we talked about ibogaine being like the most intense drug, psychedelic drug that we know from the plant in Africa, ayahuasca is like probably like top 2, bro.
Oh yeah, it's like ibogaine and then ayahuasca. Like yeah, ayahuasca. So yeah, so. When starting, so after that, I was just kind of in that little bit of trip. It all lasted like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, but so, and then after they start handing out the cups, and it's like these little cups they give you, and so they tell everyone just to wait for everyone to have one, and then we all drinking together, and then we can enter the experience together. So everyone got the cup. I took it. I didn't really feel anything for like 40 minutes. I didn't feel anything. And that kind of usually happens. Like if you take just one cup, it's like, for some people it's not enough. And so they'll ask you if you want another one. And so I was like, yeah, give me another one. So I took another one. And so like, I was kind of feeling it, but I wasn't really feeling it. Maybe I should have gave it some time, but I was kind of like, I'm not feeling this shit. And so, yeah. And so I went 3, and I was like, so maybe like 30 minutes later, I requested another one. And that's when it kind of started hitting. I was just like, oh, okay. And then, so I went back and I laid down, and then I remember like all of it. Like I remember I closed my eyes, and all of a sudden I saw like I entered this like, I don't know, it was a weird realm. And so, and I was seeing like kind of different geometric patterns and kind of like shapes and
Those molecules I was talking about.
Yeah, it was just like it was coming at me, and I was like, okay, this is fun. And so, and then I remember all of a sudden it kind of like stopped and went black. And then, so I remember I felt like almost like, and like whatever in my trip, I remember feeling something in my peripheral, and I'm like, what is that? And it just felt like something was there. And then all of a sudden it started communicating to me. And a lot of people experience this, what they call mother ayahuasca. And so a lot of people, mother Aya. And so I guess a lot of, and this is a very common thing that everyone goes into this trip. They meet mother ayahuasca, or like she comes and appears in their experience. And so, so I don't know, I just kind of, and so I felt it. And then I remember it started talking to me, and it's like, hey, like, it was saying like, hey, this is mother ayahuasca, and like, let me show you what I can do. And then all of a sudden it just turned into this like crazy light show, and just like crazy, all these lights coming at me, all these different shapes and patterns. It was just like, it was weird. It almost felt like she was kind of seducing me a little bit. Like, it was like that kind of feel to it. And it was weird. It just felt like that, very seductive. And it was just like this thing. And then it like stopped, and then it started talking to me, and it was like, we're going to deal with 3 things here, and went very specific to me, and like started speaking to me, like I could literally hear the words in my mind, and it was saying like these are the 3 things we're going to deal with. And they said, we're going to deal with some like unresolved issues with like your parents. We're going to deal with your divorce, and then we're going to deal with your grief towards the loss of your grandparents. It's told me specifically those things. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, I guess we'll do that. and then
You don't say no to Mother A.
Yeah, Mother
Yes,
A.
Mother A.
Yeah, and so it was weird. And then all of a sudden, I remember like after that, I kind of was like in this. It was weird, and I remember I went into this like, I can see this Amazon. It was almost like this rainforest, almost like the Amazon rainforest. And I remember like I was there, and then all of a sudden I was like, looked down, and dude, I'm not even kidding. I was like, I morphed into like a native tribesman. Like I was walking in the Amazon, and so I remember looked, and I was just like, I can see like some weird sandals on me, and like I remember I saw a spear, and I had a spear in my hand. And I was walking around, and like I remember seeing like, I can clearly see like the birds, I can see like the different trees, and I can see there was like a creek like near to me and stuff. And I was just like there walking around and looking, and like I was like, yeah, it was the weirdest thing. It was almost like a point of view kind of like thing, and I'm kind of just looking around. It was the weirdest thing. And then it was like for a moment I was in there, and then all of a sudden I came back, and like I was in the room. And then I remember while I was in the room, I was laying down, I had my hand like this, and then all of a sudden, like I saw my hand turning like old. And it was like I was looking clearly at it, and it looked like it was like just like maybe like an 80-year-old hand.
That shit just disintegrated.
Yeah. It just went straight old. And I was like looking, I was like, damn, this thing's been through some stuff. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is old. And then all of a sudden I saw my hand again, and it was like started decomposing. And my hand started decomposing, and then I saw blood running down my hand. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like getting kind of emotional and like getting teary-eyed just looking at it. And then what it represented to me was like what I was feeling inside. I was feeling dead inside. And in that moment, I remember that was just like a representation of what my internal experience was. It was like, I'm dead inside. And so I just kept on looking at it, and I'm like, I kept on saying that in my mind. I'm like, I'm dead inside. I know, like, I don't feel anything right now. And so I was in that moment, and then so like kind of went away, and then all of a sudden I went back in, and then I remember I went into space, and then all of a sudden my mom's face came in, and my mom's face was kind of like just turning around and like almost like a 360 kind of thing angle, and I'm kind of just looking at my mom, and I can see like it was very like vivid, I can see every detail on her face. It was just like, then all of a sudden I was just like really like filled with a lot of compassion and mercy towards her, and I just felt so much compassion. I felt so much like love towards her. And then I remember at that moment I was just saying like, I forgive you. And I said that, and I said, I forgive you. And then all of a sudden that face went away, and then my dad's face came in, and then just the same thing. It was like this 360 thing angle, and I'm just looking I can look at his face, so like every detail, every like wrinkle on his face, I can see it in the moment. And then just again that overwhelming sense of like compassion and love towards him. And so I just remember saying, I forgive you. And then his face went away, and then all of a sudden all these different faces started popping up.
Your wife too.
Yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah. And so all of a sudden like all these like faces started popping up, and I was like saying, I forgive you to each one. And I kept on saying, I forgive you, like I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. And then boom, and just like went away. And then then my ex-wife pops up in the trip, and I can, again, it's her face. And I remember at that moment, it just like, I felt every goddamn emotion at that moment. I felt like anger. I felt just confused. I felt depressed. I felt, just the anxiety. I felt every emotion at that moment. And I just remember saying, like, in my head, of like all these statements I said to myself when I was going through the divorce, of like, dude, this hurts so much. Why does she do that? Why did it have to be me? Like, we were in love, and like all these things were coming in my head, and I was just experiencing that in that moment. And I remember just I had a blanket, and I had to pull over the blanket over my head, and I just started like sobbing quietly because I was just feeling it. And this is what the benefit of having a sitter or someone that's there supporting you. So a person that was there came to me, as this woman, and she came to me and like kind of pulled the blanket off my face, and like she like kind of grabbed my arm and kind of grabbed my face and pulled it into her chest, and then she started like hugging me and started saying like, it's okay, just let it go, this is where the healing's at. And I remember after she said that, dude, I remember like just wailing, like crying, like I've never cried in my life, dude. I was just like weeping, dude. Like, I don't know, like if I was crying loud, but I don't know how long I was crying, but like I never cried like that in my life, dude. And so remember just like crying and just feeling it, and then I just during that time just feeling like a release and feeling like this weight started coming off of me, and just not. And then I remember just, I don't know how long, and so after like I was done crying, I remember I looked up to that woman, and I was saying like, yo, like I can breathe, finally I can breathe. And I was just taking in these deep breaths, and it felt like I can breathe for the first time. And so I was just like breathing in and just enjoying what I was feeling. I felt loose. I felt like light. I felt like, I feel like I was just like, man, I really released a lot from this right now. I'm just feeling just so good. And so I was just enjoying that moment. And then all of a sudden, then it kind of switched over, and I was back into this dark space. And then I remember Mother Ayahuasca comes. She's like, all right, it's time to die. I was like, what do you mean it's time to die? She's like, yo, it's time to die. And I'm like, I don't want to die, but it's like, you have to. This part, he's like, you have to die. And so I was like, all right, so.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, like,
Fuck.
well, that's why they always tell you when you go through these ayahuasca experience, don't resist. Just let it go, because if you resist, it's going to be hell for you, And so I remember going into that moment of like, whatever I'm going to go through, I'm just going to surrender to it and just let it go, because I know it's going to be helpful at the end. So yeah, once I said that, okay, all right. So, and then all of a sudden I remember just falling into this like infinite light, and it was just like kind of like just falling and falling and falling. I remember just going through this, and then all of a sudden I was like in space, and like I was like going through space and like seeing like all the planets and seeing like the stars and the different galaxies, and going from like one of the end of the universe to the other, and just like experiencing that. And then all of a sudden I just came in this space, and it was dark, and then all of a sudden I started seeing like these like beams of light. And there's like, I can see it was like energy. And there's like all these lights coming at me. And I was like, what is this place? And it was just like this total, like just infinite space. And it was just all this light. And then all of a sudden I remember this one light comes, and it looked familiar. I was like, what is that light? And I was like, that looked and felt familiar. And then another one came, and another one came. It was like 3 of them. And then I remember they all felt familiar. I was like, okay. And then I remember I turned around, and then all of a sudden it was my grandparents right in front of me. So during that time, I like in 2018, like from 2016 to 2018, I lost 3 of my grandparents. And so yeah, and I never really like grieved their loss. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I cried when they died, and, but it was almost like I kind of turned it off. I was kind of like, I don't want to think about this anymore, And so, but, yeah, so in that time I was there, and like I remember they was like standing and looking at me, and I was just like, dude, it was like so much like it was like, it was weird because it felt like real. I felt like they were really in front of me, and like, I was like, oh my God, I haven't seen you guys in a long. It was almost like that. I was having that conversation. I'm like, I haven't seen you guys in a long time, and like, you know what I mean? I'm like, wow, like how are you doing? I was just like talking to them like that, and then I remember at the moment like I stopped, and then I was like, you know what, like, I know that I know. I haven't seen you in a while, but like I just want you to know that you're in my mind and my heart, and I will always love you, and I'll never forget you. I remember saying those words, and then we all hugged. But like the whole time they didn't speak to me. It was just more like they were just smiling and had such a loving, compassionate face towards me. And I was just like, that moment, I was just like, we all hugged. And then I remember like, boom, I was like kind of back. I was like going back into that infinite light and going through space and time and one from one end of the universe to the next. And so going through that again. And then I landed back in the room. And so I was back in the teepee again. And from that moment, when I came back, I didn't have any more like visuals. I didn't have any more like hallucinations, but during that time, I just felt like a lot of like what I would call them downloads. There were like all these like truths coming to me, like these almost like, I don't even say the secrets of life, but it was more of just like a lot of just like crazy truths about like who I am as Luis, like who am I really, and like really teaching me a lot about things about myself. And just, I remember I got a journal. I just started writing all these things down. I have them to this day in this journal of like everything at that moment I was like hearing and listening and whatever was like being told to me. Like it was like I wrote it all down and I have it to this day, So I always look back and just check it out and see like, man, this is crazy deep, dude, about like things I'm like, I wouldn't even think if when I was sober, I wouldn't even think of these things, And so yeah, and that was the rest of the time. And then usually with ayahuasca, one of those things, the things about it is like a lot of people throw up. So you throw up, and so because
that's because of the psilocybin in it, right?
The DMT. You talking about the DMT? There's DMT in ayahuasca, not psilocybin.
Isn't like psilocybin like one of like the?
It's the main ingredients in shrooms. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought it was like in a whole bunch of the psychedelics, like shrooms, like peyote.
Yeah. Well, I know. For ayahuasca, the main psychoactive ingredient is DMT.
Oh, okay.
And so like so that's the thing that kind of it gets you there. But like the throw up part is like, I guess like a lot of people experience the throw up part. I guess it's like to them it's like the purging and cleansing when it's like when you're of like all your whatever's coming out or whatever you're dealing with, like it purges out. And so it's like a cleansing. That's how they liken it. And so
that's that positive reframe right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just imagine you getting out of the blanket and just purging, dude. Like that's also
it was weird because like I didn't feel it the whole time to the end when I was like done. Because usually you're deep in the trip and you can be like throwing up, but like I didn't experience that. And it was like towards the end, I was like, then it started coming up and I'm like, shit, I can feel it. And I just remember like, oh fuck. And so I got a bucket and I was like, I just threw it all up. And then like I remember everyone like clapping, just like because that's what they do for everyone. Like when they throw it, they're like, yeah, that's cool. And so yeah, but so that was my experience, man. And so I think after that, just and like I was talking about after is the integration part, and like I didn't go see a therapist to talk about it or anything like that, but like on my own, I did the work and like was able to like really integrate a lot of the stuff that I learned and be able to just apply it in my life and just keep on applying it. To this day, I'm still a lot of things that I learned there. I'm still applying and continuing to apply in my life because these were the truths that were given to me at that moment that was meaningful to me. What was given to me in that experience really just transformed how I looked at life, how I looked at myself, how I looked at situations, And so, and I think that's the power of like psychedelics and the psychedelic experience, It can be so transformative, like it actually reshapes your brain. It really rewires your brain and allows you to like to create new neural networks in your brain to be able to learn new information and to be able to like really see whatever your trauma, whatever thing that's bothering you, whatever is like holding you back in life, it can really open your mind up and open your brain to see it in a different light.
Again, everybody, for tuning into Therapy House. Here to remind you to check out our link tree at linktree/therapy_house. There you can find all the links for our podcast website, the different platforms that we are broadcasting on, individual links to our personal pages. Like, comment, rate, and review our podcast so that we can grow. And of course, subscribe so that you'll be the first to know when we drop something new. Until then, we'll see you next time.